Yeah, NBA refs are never going to be loved by anybody.
It's like this in all the leagues. Like, the NFL does it too, where it's like, especially when pass interference was getting reviewed, that was the dumbest thing ever. I hate refs. I don't like them calling anything ever. I think the sports would be better with like 50% of the penalties.
You need to call obvious stuff. The like minute pass interference, roughing the passer is horrible in the NFL.
Penalties are bad. No one watches the game to watch the refs. No one does it. No one watches the games and says, I hope there's a lot of reviews.
Yo guys, what's going on? Welcome back to another episode of Stay Hot. I am joined by Theo Ash, the best bird watcher in the world. I'm joined by Matthew Sponhour, the best corn reviewer in the world. And just a reminder to everyone, we are on Spotify, YouTube, Apple. So whatever platform you're on, make sure you review, rate, subscribe, whatever you can do. How are you guys doing today?
If that was somebody's first listen to Stay Hot, I feel like they wouldn't know what the hell was going on.
That is a fair point.
We're at episode 19.
What do you want me to say about Matt? What do you want me to say about 19, you? That no you're excuse.
I'm not hating. It was a compliment, and I appreciate that. I'm just saying. Imagine you tune. Okay, this is going to be a sports podcast, and they talk about bird reviewing and corn.
We're at episode 19. Everyone should know what's going on.
Everyone's already heard the podcast. Good point.
Everyone in the world has
Everyone
heard the
in the world
has
already heard the podcast.
We have no room for growth. We're operating at peak capacity. All right.
And just another reminder, make sure you follow at StayHotPod on TikTok. You'll be getting some great content there as well. Let's hop right into the draft lottery. Because, Matt, I know you're upset the Hornets, of course, didn't get the first pick.
Yeah.
But you're getting by, right?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. To keep Charlotte down, they're going to have to screw us over sometimes. I talked to Adam about it, Adam Silver, and he told me that we were getting a high pick, but it just didn't work out that way. Seriously, though, the Hornets are going to be fine. I'm fine with the 11th pick. They had an 8% chance to move up, and we moved up last year, and we, capitalized on getting a high pick like that. So I'm not too upset about it. I think the Hornets are going to get a really good player at 11.
Yeah, I mean, my Phoenix Suns got pick 29, and I mean, they're not done playing yet, so I didn't really care very much. I did check out some highlights of some of the top draft prospects, and I have a couple takes, but nothing too serious. I'm glad for Detroit, I guess, because they have not been good since, the Rip Hamilton kind of era. But yeah, I looked at Cade Cunningham and I looked at Jalen Green were my two, and I feel like I kind of thought Jalen Green looked a little bit better than Cade Cunningham, but on a highlight reel, it's a little bit tough to tell because Jalen Green is a walking highlight and Cade Cunningham is a little bit more of a finesse, make the right play type of guy. And
yeah, I was looking at a mock draft, and the Cavs are actually expected to get Jalen Green with the third pick.
Really?
Yeah,
he's a baller, man. It's insane. Watch Jalen. If you haven't watched him,
here's the thing. He's a guard, right? The Cavs
he is a guard.
The Cavs have a lot of guards, I feel like.
Well,
they just keep doing this thing where they just keep going in and getting more guards.
Maybe, but Jalen Green reminds me a lot of Zach LaVine. Like, literally watch this guy. His athleticism is... I mean, I watched him and then I watched Cade Cunningham, and it looked like Cade Cunningham was moving in slow motion compared to the stuff that Jalen Green does. Jalen Green has got to be instantly one of the most athletic people in the league, like up there with John Morant, up there with Zach LaVine. It's crazy to watch him and the scoring opportunities that he creates. I'm really excited for him, just from the highlight reels. I'll get more into it probably.
I mean, yeah, I'm interested to see what Cleveland does too. They're kind of in a weird spot. It seems like they're going to pay Jarrett Allen a ton of money, and I don't know if that's necessarily the best strategy, because has he really shown that he's going to become like a star-level player? I'm not sure. Not saying I have anything against him, but I haven't seen the development out of him yet. But they also want to move off of Colin Sexton, apparently. Apparently, that's what the reports are, and I don't get that either. So what they do at 3... could be a whole bunch of different things.
Yeah, I always felt like Sexton was better than Garland.
That's how I feel too. But apparently they don't like the fit. Is whatever. They don't like the fit of Garland and Sexton, which makes sense. You know, we kind of saw with Portland, maybe CJ and Dame haven't been the best fit, and that's hurt them. But I don't even feel like that's really Portland's biggest problem. So that's not something that I would be worrying about right now if I were the Cavs.
When you're Cleveland, are you really in a position to worry about fit if you're not even competing for a playoff spot?
Right. They're not even a playoff spot. You got to just worry about getting as much talent as you can on the team, and they're not talented enough to be a playoff team right now.
The team building strategy that has never once failed is overpaying a defensive minded big and letting an exciting young scorer go. That has never backfired on anyone. That seems like a great idea. I think Cleveland should do it.
That's exactly why I have such a hard time believing the Colin Sexton reports. It doesn't make any sense at all for them to want to pay Jarrett Allen $25 million, but they don't want to pay Colin Sexton. I don't get it. But I guess we'll see. They did give up a pick for Allen.
Yeah. Anyway, I don't know enough about, or I don't know. It's the top of the draft. I think it seemed all good. It's some teams that definitely need the talent are going to get the talent. And, you know, the Rockets should be able to replace James Harden. I think they should go with Jalen Green to replace James Harden. I think that would be a lot of fun. I don't know. It should be interesting. And your Hornets, I'm sorry that they didn't move up, but they already kind of got Cade Cunningham with LaMelo Ball last year. I think they got your triple-double guard guy. So,
oh yeah, no, I mean I can't be upset about it. And then if the Hornets had gotten one, I was kind of scared that we wouldn't end up taking Cade Cunningham, and then if he ends up good, then it's like, oh my God, how do they not take him because we already have LaMelo? I'm sitting at 11 here. I've barely looked into it, I'll be honest, but Kai Jones, for Texas, really good fit. Makes sense at 11. That's what I hope the Hornets do right now.
I know you were talking about you wanted the Hornets to get like a lot of inside help. You thought that was their biggest weakness.
I'm not a huge fan of picking needs in the NBA. Never makes sense
especially
at all.
In the NBA.
In the NBA, it seriously makes absolutely no sense. But he might be considered BPA at 11. We obviously don't know how the board's going to fall, but We'll see. And he does fit what the Hornets need, and he's super high upside. And watching him and LaMelo and Miles Bridges on a fast break would be so much fun.
Yeah. And then assuming that Cade Cunningham does go to Detroit, are they going to be good? I lean no next year, even with Cade.
If Cade Cunningham is really good right out of the gate, which is always hard to project how good a player is going to be immediately, they could be pretty good. But even then, I don't know if they have an all-star level player on that team, and it's pretty hard to make the playoffs without one.
I mean, when was the last time we saw a rookie come in and immediately turn around an NBA franchise?
Immediately?
LaMelo Ball. Well, I don't know if LaMelo was the primary reason why the Hornets were in that play-in game, but
yeah, we kind of have to see what else they do in the offseason. But they're headed in the right direction. Isaiah Stewart's really good. Sadiq Bey's really good. Grant's obviously really good.
He didn't turn them around because they weren't. I don't know. Like Luka might be an answer for that. Yeah, I think he qualifies.
Yeah, but even if Cade Cunningham comes in and is like a Luka level rookie, I don't know if that's necessarily quite enough to make the Pistons really good. I think they could, make the play-in, obviously. But we kind of have to see what else they do this offseason.
Yeah, and now a lot of people were talking about, how interesting the NBA draft lottery is and whether or not the NFL should implement that. I'm not really a fan. I don't know how
like
you
it for
guys
the
feel
NBA.
about it. I think it works for the NBA.
I don't know. It would probably work for the NFL. It would. I don't think we need to do it. I don't think that tanking is as big of a problem as people think it is. I think that tanking, because when you tank, you get fired. When you tank, you get fired. Everyone who has ever tanked, like the Eagles, everyone was like, oh, they tanked sitting Jalen Hurts. That was a pure tank job. Doug Peterson lost his job over that. I don't think everyone worries about tanking. When you lose all your games, you get fired from your job.
Well, unless,
I don't think anyone tries it. So the lottery is anti-tanking. But I just don't think that it prevents like whatever tanking that there is to any significant degree. Now, I do like the idea that the best player in college football isn't sentenced to going to a terrible organization. But with the lottery, that still pretty much happens. I would like to see some sort of the draft being some sort of free agency. And I know that is a whole nother discussion, but more than a lottery, I'd like to see that. But I don't have a problem with the lottery. It's exciting. I just don't think it's better. No,
I'm curious as to how you think that would work. That doesn't.
Well,
like almost like a silent auction, are you thinking?
Yeah, a little. Well, just like free agency, I think, because I think some rookies should have a kind of a choice on where they go. And I know people are like, oh, they would never, ever go to a bad team then. Like a team like the Jaguars would never get anyone. I don't know. I feel like if you offered a rookie enough money, and I think that might be able to turn around a team faster because they could have money to sign Trevor Lawrence and Jalen Waddle, you know? Like they would be able to, instead of just having one shot, bad teams with a lot of capital could take in 3 first-round picks, and a team with no cap room who is really good might not get any first. So I actually think it might help parity even more, because how long have the Browns were terrible for 20 years when they were getting high picks, you know? The Jaguars have been bad since I've been alive, except for that like 1 year. And you know, I like that idea. I think it could enhance parity. I think it could enhance player choice. That is, if you're going to change the draft to anything, that is my big thing, is like I would like to talk about that as an option. But I don't hate the lottery, and I don't hate just doing it worst to first. But that's my like big theory.
I feel like there's some organizations that would be just totally avoided. Not a ton, but there's some organizations that players would totally avoid, and then they'd become so ridiculously bad, and then they'd have to overspend even more for maybe not even the best rookies, and that makes them even worse, so it could kind of build on itself a little bit there.
I think one of the beauties of the NFL is that market doesn't really play a significant role, right? Like in the NBA, like as a free agent, you're not going to a small market team if you're a big free agent. But in the NFL, that doesn't really happen. And there's also, I don't think, as much player movement in the NFL. Maybe I could be wrong about that, but I feel like
I also think like you look at running backs, right? Running backs are a position where they have their most value when they first get in the league, and they're never going to get paid fairly anymore because people are starting to realize that, and they'll be on their rookie contracts when they're the most valuable. And that's a big problem for. So I know that there are complications, and I know that like it could really hurt if a team just like could not sign anyone. But like you said, the Jaguars signed a bunch of guys in free agency this year. They signed that cornerback from Seattle. They signed Tim Tebow, but he doesn't even really count. They signed Marvin Jones. I mean, the Lions are able to sign Trae Flowers. I mean, it's not like free agency when it happens in the offseason. It's not like the bad teams are just totally unable to bring in guys. It's not like the NBA, and I don't think it would be different with rookies. I don't think they would totally avoid the Lions. I don't think they'd totally avoid the Jaguars. I was thinking more for the NBA there. I can't lie. Like if you were one of the top, like a Zion level player, would never choose to go to the Pelicans. No offense to the Pelicans, but
yeah.
And if you can't get that top 1 or 2 guys in the NBA, it makes it really tough to actually be a competitive team.
Yeah, it would just be interesting to I don't know. I would have to look into it a little bit more because I'm certainly like obviously it would be bad if one team just gets totally like phased out of the league. that would suck. Yeah. And it's not going to happen under like a 32 just draft. But I do think there are a lot of upsides to like player and even team that could result from a kind of a free agency style draft, at least in the NFL. I don't know about the NBA because NBA players do seem to be a little bit more, I would like to go to the Lakers. Like, I think
kind of historical teams. But let's stop talking about bad teams and let's move on to the NBA Conference Finals. You know, the Suns and Clippers, the Suns have been playing really well. And then, of course, my Hawks. You know, my Hawks have been killing it.
They have. And once the Suns are getting Chris Paul back, I just got that notification on my phone.
Yeah.
It's been confirmed that he'll play in Game 3. So, and honestly, I don't think we don't need him. We're up 2-0. I mean, Cameron Payne is so damn good.
Okay, I wouldn't say you don't need him. You're up 2-0.
We don't need him to win this
series. You've played close games.
They have, but we won both of them, so clearly we don't need him to win. But it's going to help. Although I would say that I'm a little bit sick of Chris Paul getting so much credit for the Suns being good. Even when they were winning without him, they were like, the announcers frequently would be saying like, and this is the the Chris Paul mindset has taught them how to be good.
I was watching the post game.
They say it so much. And I love Chris Paul. And I love Chris Paul. And he is so important. And we would not be the number 2 seed in balling like this without him. But, like, come on, guy. Like, it's like Chris Paul does not baby the Sun. It sounds like he's, like, literally, like, the... like helicopter
like a puppeteer, like
really?
Orchestrating everything.
I definitely miss, like, because I've been trying to push the Chris Paul narrative for a while here, but now it's almost like oversaturated. It's tough.
Right. I know. It's like Devin Booker will drop like 35, 6, and 4, and Chris Paul will drop like 12, 8, and 8, and everyone will be like, Chris Paul is the more valuable guy there. And I love Chris Paul. I love you, Chris Paul. You're so awesome. But I was a little bit sick of like everyone else on the Suns being like controlled by Chris Paul.
Chris Paul is valuable. Like Chris Paul definitely has value, and like he's a big part of why they're where they are right now. But he's like Devin Booker is easily the best and most valuable player on that team.
Right.
I 100% agree. Well, part of it is just the scenario where it's like, okay, the team didn't make the playoffs, and really they didn't make the playoffs last year, just kind of off injuries or whatnot. If they had been healthy, they would have made it. And then you add an all-star level player to a team that was already really good, or at least good enough to probably get into the playoffs healthy. Of course they're going to get way better. Roles reversed, and the team has Chris Paul, and then they add Devin Booker. Of course, they're going to get better that way, too.
Exactly.
Right. They were a Karis LeVert miss in the bubble away from making the playoffs, and DeAndre Ayton was suspended 25 games last year. Like, it was obvious that this team was, like, capable of, even though I kind of predicted we'll not get into that. But it was very, very, like, not shocking that they got this much better, especially the way, like, Anthony Davis being hurt and all that, and LeBron. So I just want to say I love Chris Paul. I'm super glad he'll be back for Game 3. But I admire the Suns' tenacity and their ability to win without him. And it wasn't all we are good even without Chris Paul. And now that he's back, we should be even better. But
now, can we talk about that the last like 9 seconds of Game 2? Like what was
the last like hour and a half?
And then,
the last 5 years. Why did they review everything?
Because they're in a lose-lose situation. Yeah, NBA refs are never going to be loved by anybody. Either they spend all this time reviewing the calls, or they don't review them, and then people are going to be like, why didn't they review the calls? This is late game in the Western Conference Finals. And if they ever mess up in these late situations or whatever, and they get the call wrong and they don't review it, they're going to get killed for it. But yeah, I think we'd be better off them reviewing a lot less and then living with them maybe messing up every once in a while.
Right, because we wouldn't know that they messed up unless we looked at it so closely. Like, again, the Beverly poke out is what everyone's mad about. No one would know that they messed that up, right? Like, no one would care. No one would know. It's like this in all the leagues. Like, the NFL does it too, where it's like, especially when pass interference was getting reviewed. That was the dumbest thing ever. I hate refs. I don't like them calling anything ever. I think the sports would be better with like 50%
they should call
of the penalties.
You need to call obvious stuff. Obvious stuff, but like the like minute pass interference, roughing the passer is horrible in the NFL. Penalties
are bad. No one watches the game to watch the refs. No one does it. No one watches the games and says, I hope there's a lot of reviews. Like, I would rather them, and like after that, and it should take like 2 seconds. Like when Ayton had the game winner, like, okay, it took me 5 seconds to say, okay, when that ball went through the hoop, there was 0.4 left on the shot. Okay, done. It's over in 2 minutes max.
Maybe you should be a ref.
I should be a ref. I should be a ref. I would do a better job. At least like mic them up and like let them.
That's a great idea.
The XFL did this where they mic'd them up, and as the refs were like looking it over, you could hear their conversations. That A, makes it more interesting. B, it puts some pressure on them to not just be screwing around or whatever they're doing where they can't. It takes them 10 minutes to see what the how much time is left on a clock in a replay.
Yeah, and the reviews in NFL or just in football are even worse because if they start reviewing a whole bunch of stuff and the game goes into overtime, you're talking about like a 4.5 hour game. And they're just brutal. They take all the energy out of you. It's not worth it sometimes.
It's draining.
Right. So I don't like it. I think that they should just less ref involvement. I'm always for. Always for. Anytime there's any proposition that is like, this is going to be a penalty now. This is going to be like next year they're kind of looking at getting rid of like the drawing the foul leading into a shot. That's awesome. That's going to be so good for the NBA when they stop doing that. They're like, sorry, Trae Young and James Harden, but like I love that.
Here's the thing with that is like I know they get slandered for like doing it, but they only do it because they can. Right. When they no longer can do it, they're just going to find other ways to score. Like it's not going to.
No one likes refs. No one likes penalties. It's dumb. And hopefully, we're not even talking about Suns Clippers right now.
Yeah, we're not even we just totally got away from Suns Clippers.
But anything that is refs, I don't want to see any refs. I want to go a game, and I don't want to hear them say. I don't want to see them. They should be like little kids, out of sight, out of mind. Little kids at a dinner party or something. Stay in your room. Don't make any noise. Just let the adults, the athletes, work things out. I've played street basketball with no reps, and we always seem to do a decent job. Like, come on.
Well, before hopping into Hawks Bucks, I think we should start taking victory laps for our takes that pan out. Anytime we have a good take. Well,
you're the only one who had a good take here.
Hey, man. I'm not here to take credit. I'm just here to do what's fair. So, if we want to cue the music, I would just like to, thank my mom, my dad, all the fans who have, supported me along the way as, I've been doing my little basketball journey. And all I can say is, I started from the bottom with my Luka take and now I'm here predicting the Hawks in the finals. I'm going to stick with the Hawks. I'm not going to predict them.
Can you do me a favor?
Yeah, sure.
Put your hands up like this. How many Atlanta Hawks players can you name?
Got him. Also, I'm mad at Matt because Blaiden posted that video of him predicting the Hawks winning, right? And in that clip at the beginning, I said I'm also going to take the Hawks, and then Matt gives his reasoning, and I changed my mind and I picked the Sixers. So I should.
I'm not mad at myself.
Theo, I'm willing to give you half credit. I'm willing to give you half credit.
I'm not mad at myself. Literally, what had to happen for the Sixers to lose that series is Ben Simmons played as bad as humanly possible. I wasn't high on Simmons before that series, but he was far better than he was. All of a sudden, he just refuses to shoot,
right?
Like at all whatsoever. Yeah. It was crazy,
right? Because you said Ben Simmons is like not bad in that clip, which was true before the last 4 games.
He dropped like a triple double in the last game.
I know, he is like Ben Simmons. We've been slandering Ben Simmons a lot, and I think deservedly so because he cannot shoot, and I'm not sure if he is a piece on a team that is like he's a very his fit is very weird. But he should be playing in China. He shouldn't be an NBA player. Takes have really been prevalent, and I don't know. Matt looked bad.
Is the Shanghai roster on Wikipedia? Does it still have a bunch of random players from the NBA, like Ben Simmons,
Tyler
and
Hero?
Stuff?
I don't know. It's funny, but now Ben Simmons has somehow been underrated right now, even though he's not even that useful. He is still somehow underrated. Although I will say,
well, he's not going to play like that all the time. You'd figure.
You would hope so.
Yeah. I don't know if you guys saw the Woj report that apparently the Sixers aren't trying to move on from Ben Simmons, which I think roughly translates to we asked everybody about his trade value, and it's not high enough to get us a guy who we think can be a second star on a championship team. So we're just not going to move him to try to save face.
Yeah, it might be a good idea to let him play some regular season games next year and move him before the deadline because his trade value is not going to go down.
Thinking.
Yeah, that's probably
Daryl Morey is not a dummy. He's got to know, even if he thinks Simmons will get better, and he will, he knows not to trade a guy right as his value is the absolute lowest. But he knows that Simmons and Embiid as a fit just doesn't work.
Also, when we haven't talked about the Bucks or the Hawks at all. Blaiden, you are right. They have won. They're in a good spot, up 1-0. But I still think the Bucks win this series. Here's
my problem. A lot of people were saying that the Bucks didn't shoot well, and that's a big reason as to why they lost. And I agree. I think Middleton went like 0 for 9. But the Hawks also didn't shoot great. Like Herter didn't have a great game. Like I'm not totally like sold on this idea that like Trae Young has to put up like 50 every game for them to win. Like if they can get their role players involved more, they can still like pull out. Like I don't know, I think it'll be a close series. They're not gonna like sweep the Bucks, but if they can have a couple good games where sometimes Trae Young does go out for 40, 50, but other times maybe Herter puts up 25. Like they can definitely win this in 6 or 7.
A weird thing about Trae Young is like I don't think that he is like the world's greatest 3-point shooter. It's weird. You think of him as like he is,
yeah.
But he misses a lot of shots.
Yeah, he's garnered the nickname Ice Trae because he like makes a ton of late threes that like matter a lot. But you're right. He misses a lot of shots.
He hits a lot of high difficulty, crazy shots. But he seems to also like miss badly on a decent amount of shots.
He hits enough of those long threes and those high difficulty threes that you have to guard him from there, and that's why it's so effective.
But he's
just so versatile that defenses can't deal with him.
32 to 36% in his career is kind of where he's shooting from 3, which is like not bad, but it's like
he can just do so much.
I don't know. He's weird. His 3-point shooting is weird.
Matt, I think you said this where Trae Young is a threat to do literally anything on the court at any time, and it makes him really hard to stop, and that's why he's able to get so many other people involved.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's why he's so difficult, and I think that's what makes offensive players really good. Kobe would often talk about this, just the more things you can do, the more defenses have to deal with. That's why Curry's so effective. The farther away you shoot, the more you have to guard, the more difficult it is to guard multiple things. And you can see that not only just like with shooting these long threes, but when he's driving in off these pick and rolls, guys are so scared that he's going to pass it out or lob it up to Collins or Capella that they can't get a contest on him before he can put up a floater. So I don't know. It's just really fun to watch.
Have you guys also noticed that his floater and his lob look identical?
They do.
Like when he it's literally, it reminds me of watching Brady do a play action. Like it looks exactly like him just handing it off.
One play I thought was interesting from the first game is that Giannis was guarding Trae and they were pretty deep, but they were cross half court, but they were pretty deep. And Giannis turned to look at the coaches or get some things, and he turned his head. They were really deep. And Trae just pulled as soon as he looked and tried to communicate with his coaches from deep. And it was the play where Giannis hit him in the face and he shot 3. It was kind of near the end. And I just thought that you can't even when you cross half court, you can't even look. You can't stop paying attention for a second. Look at your coaches because he will just straight up pull. And he missed. But I mean, he did draw that foul, which I thought was kind of a soft foul, but still, it was an interesting play to me where I thought it kind of.
I think that's an interesting contrast between Young and Simmons. Young might not be the best 3-point shooter ever, at least percentage wise, but he's so confident in doing it that it's still a threat. Simmons used to be that way where even though he was never a great mid-range shooter, when he had the confidence to do it, it still made defenses step up and guard him, and it made him a much more effective player. So confidence just matters so much. And then with the shimmy move, Young's he's
that
just
was not a shimmy. He was
not,
I don't think that was a shimmy. I don't think he danced. That was not a little dance. That was he raised his arms in a non-dancing way. I don't think that was a Steph
kind of just
shimmy.
to relax his shoulders.
Kind of relax your shoulder a little bit. That's what he was doing. This was not a Steph Curry shimmy before you hit the shot. If you watch that, I thought it was so
cold.
cool when
I first saw
it. It was awesome. It was awesome, but I thought he did a little shimmy. It was just like a flex your shoulder before shooting kind of thing.
Oh, that's still a celebration though. That's still a celebration.
He because he still took his time
Yeah, if you purposely take a super long time holding the ball when you're about to shoot a 3, that's flexing. Yeah. You'll see that happen all the James Harden used to do. He'd cross people up and just sit there.
No, when Harden would just stare at someone on the ground like that, it's disrespect.
And the more you think about a shot, the harder it is to make it. So it's also flexing that it doesn't even bother you.
Yes, but it wasn't a dance. I originally thought it was a little shimmy dance. It wasn't. I think it was just like a little, I have all this time. I just crossed you up. I have all the time in the world.
I can't believe no one stepped up on him,
I'm going to take a deep breath,
like,
and I'm going to relax my shoulders.
It's not like anyone fell. They just didn't step up on him, and I thought that was weird.
Well, the one guy went flying in the opposite direction. He didn't hit the ground, but he was out of the play.
I guess.
Anyway.
Well, I want to hop into some NFL talk a little bit because we still like the NFL over here.
Ooh, I just got an update from a Twitter. I got an update. It says, everyone will love this. NFL is implementing a new policy that will allow teams to use 2 different helmets starting in the 2022 season. Throwback helmets are coming back.
Oh, that's sick.
That's awesome.
So sick.
That's awesome.
That's great.
That's great.
Now, the NFL needs to have more jerseys like the NBA does. And I hope they bring back the old cowboy uniforms. That's the number one thing I'm thinking of right now.
Old Cowboys.
With the old silver color.
Yeah.
I'm thinking the old cowboy uniforms with the white helmet and the dark blue star. I loved those, even though they're like they kind of look like Pro Bowl. They kind of look like Pro Bowl uniforms now, but I was always a sucker for those. And the old Eagles, the old like Eagles ones with the not the wing helmet, but like the old vintage eagle on it. And it's gonna be sick.
Yeah, 100%.
Exactly.
Yeah, no, this is gonna be awesome. Although I would say that I think the NBA has a little too many uniforms. I think that they don't need to switch them up so much.
Yeah, a little bit, but
if every team had, like,
I'd rather have too many than too few.
I think
an alternate helmet.
I think if every NFL team has like one alternate with a different helmet and everything, I think that could be really cool. But they don't need to be switching them every single year.
Part of the problem with these throwback NFL uniforms is a lot of throwback NFL uniforms are horrible. There's a lot of like, this is from 1932. It's a terrible uniform.
There's a reason why it hasn't been used since 1932.
Yeah.
It's like brown and like mustard yellow, and it's like dark blue with stripes.
It's like that. Those were the only colors they could make at the time. So that's what they did. But like, we make better colors now for jerseys. So
we make better colors now. I love when we invented better colors.
No, it's not that we invented better colors, but it's easier to better technology to implement that into. Like, come on, you know what I meant.
I know what you're talking about. I know what you're talking about.
All right, well, sticking with the NFL,
better colors now.
Sticking with the NFL, are there any players this season do you think that you guys think are going to have a breakout season?
Nope.
None? 0 players? Everyone's bad.
It's going to look the same as last year. Everyone's record is going to be
exactly the same. So we're going to do a quick segment where we talk about NFL players who could take the leap into next NFL season. And I want to start with tight ends. Matt, we do actually have some players who we think can break out this year, despite your negativity.
I won't lie, I do too.
I want to start with tight end Anthony Firkser. Firkser. I said Firkser. Anthony Firkser. I've talked to a couple Titans fans, and they really like him. Now, I haven't gotten to watch a whole lot of film on him, but I know that PFF is like relatively predictive, and based on what they have, he was top 10 in PFF grade last year. Which, for a tight end, I know it's not like crazy high, it's like 78. But like for a guy who's supposed to, be a backup last year, that's pretty impressive. And I think he could very easily be a solid starter for them in this next season. Now, Theo, I know you're looking at me weird because you're like, they have Julio and AJ Brown.
And Derrick Henry. Do you see tight end being a featured part in that offense?
It's not that I think it could be a featured part in the offense, but the way I see it is like, okay, you have Julio and AJ Brown. You're probably going to have to allocate a lot of resources to guard those guys. It's not unbelievable that you could have a Robert Tonyan situation where he's just like wide open.
That's
and I could very easily see him having like 800 yards.
He is in a very good position. And he's their tight end 1, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's what I figured.
Also, if we're talking in terms of like not fantasy wise and just like NFL wise, like, yeah, it'll be important to have some sort of either if he can be in the slot or like, again, because if he's no threat at all, that does make things a little bit easier on the wideouts. But if he can be a little bit of a actual good in the slot or blocking. I don't know. I do think that I think that he'll probably be more important to the Titans like as a player than if anyone is listening to this. Like, should I draft him for my fantasy team? You know,
yeah, I don't know if I would say
his
draft him for
impact.
fantasy.
I think his impact will come mostly in ways that don't impact fantasy, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Is basically what I'm getting at.
You said he should play in the slot. Last year, of his 262 passing snaps, 205 of them were in the slot. So he has experience there already.
Right, and that could be, yeah. I've got a guy, though, a tight end, though, that probably fantasy players might be a little bit more interested in, and that is Adam Troutman out of New Orleans. Because New Orleans, he doesn't have a lot of experience. This is very much a projection. But I do remember watching some Adam Troutman catches from last year and being like, that guy kind of routed up that linebacker. He's a good route runner, a good receiver. He played at, I can't remember the school off the top of my head, but he played at, I think it was maybe Dayton. And he put up some ridiculous numbers at Dayton. He was supposed to be a very good, receiver. And he's also a pleasantly, surprisingly good blocker. And so he should be able to be on the field for a lot of snaps. That tight end room, I guess there's Taysom Hill maybe, I don't know. But that wide receiving weapons room is not high and is not crazy. So I think that he could see a nice amount of targets, and I think he's pretty talented. And that's a fantasy option, and that should that's a fantasy option is Troutman snag late.
Another tight end I'm going to throw in real quick, Irv Smith Jr. He's on the come up. He's going to be good.
Guy?
Okay.
Yep.
Okay.
I like him a lot.
I remember Irv Smith had some decent games last year.
He's got some decent games under his belt. He's been sitting behind Kyle Rudolph for a while. He's really athletic, and he's been super young, and it's hard to be a super young tight end. I have a lot of faith in him.
Yeah, tight end is such a tough position to blocking, being a tackle level blocker and also a wide receiver tier receiver is so hard. Like that is.
Oh yeah.
But
and that's why you see these guys, they'll hit their prime at like 31. It's the weirdest thing.
And there's like 4 good ones. Like there's 4 tight ends that actually people are uncommon. Like, oh, he's really good.
I don't think it's that uncommon to see like breakout tight ends. Like we saw like Logan Thomas and Robert Tonyan last year have like pretty solid seasons despite not really ever existing on the big stage.
But it's so funny with tight ends. They'll have a breakout year, and you look at their stats, they'll have like 450 yards.
Right. But you'll see like they're like 20 elite wide receivers. They're like 20 elite wide receivers. Like DJ Moore is probably someone who we're going to talk about, and like he's not even viewed as like good, or he's viewed as good. He's just not like no one ever talks about him.
Most people think
Moore
of like
tight
elite.
end would be a DJ Moore caliber tight end would be like the 5th best tight end in the league.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I think a lot of times when people think about wide receiver, it's like, oh, if you're not top 10, you're like trash. Like we said, Mike Evans wasn't a top 10 receiver, and people like got mad. Like it's not that he's not good. It's just
there's so many.
There can only be 10 top 10 receivers, and Mike Evans just happens to not be one of them. I don't know. But moving on to receiver, Matt, I think you had a guy from the Jets.
I do, and it makes me a little bit nervous to predict a breakout for him because maybe he's just not in the best position to really break out fantasy-wise or get a ton of yards-wise, but a guy I really like is Denzel Mims. He's a really rare player who can win in all 3 ways. He creates separation on routes. He's big enough to beat guys one-on-one, and he's fast enough to beat guys one-on-one. There just isn't a lot of receivers that I think are like that. And I thought he had some solid snaps last year, too. It's not like he was just totally a dud or whatever. But it was a tough offense to get going, and then he got hurt.
Yeah, he was injured for most of the year. I might have a Jets guy. He's a rookie, but Elijah Moore is someone I wish I was higher on when I was doing my draft stuff, because I started with him with a really high grade, and then as the kind of went down, I was like, is he really he got some Antonio Brown comps, and I was like, I don't know if he's really that good. He's kind of small. Maybe he's a little bit more of a slot guy. There's so many slot guys. And I moved him down. And now the reports out of training camp are that he's just completely unguardable. And, man, he was just so good at the end of the 2020 season. And I'm like, I shouldn't have moved him down. I should have had him as a top, because I think that is going to age. I think he is going to be a good guy for a really long time. Elijah Moore might be my Jets. I don't know if it's a breakout because he's a rookie. There's no... Yeah. precedent.
But I mean, you can
might
break
have
out
him.
as a rookie.
I think the Jets receivers could end up being nice. We'll just see how that whole scheme works and how Zach Wilson
weird
is.
Receiving core. My problem with the Jets is I don't know if they have anyone who can really be a number one. Like, even if Mims is, like, good, I don't know if he's quite a number one receiver. I don't think Corey Davis is really a number one receiver, but they definitely have talent there.
Yeah, I mean, a bunch of guys could get hurt for them, and they could still field a pretty good wide receiving core. It's very deep.
Yeah,
and it's very Wilson. And as far as fantasy and like numbers go, it's very Zach Wilson dependent too. And rookie quarterbacks almost never produce like a bunch of really high scoring wide receivers. So we'll see how it goes.
Pretty
but
fair.
I do like Mims a decent amount. I like Moore a lot. Another guy that I like for a breakout wide receiver is Bryan Edwards out of Vegas. That's a guy who was hurt year one, but I thought he was better than Ruggs coming out of last year's draft. I don't know if any of you guys have looked at him at all.
I mean, I didn't like Ruggs a lot, but I have not paid attention a lot to Edwards.
Yeah, I don't know.
He's in a really good position to break out, I feel like.
That too.
Because it's a winnable wide receiver battle for him. I figure Ruggs is going to be a little bit better this year. But I don't know. I mean, Edwards was really good at South Carolina. I can tell you that for a fact. But I didn't see a ton of him last season, so I can't really speak on how he was.
He was fine, I guess. He was also hurt. But Ruggs is projected to be the wide receiver one there, and I just don't think Ruggs is that good. I don't.
No,
I think
I agree. I do think the Raiders have a lot of underrated wide receivers. They do this where like they had like Aguilar, who like wasn't all that great, but he's like pretty solid, and Hunter Renfrow is like decent. I think Hunter Renfrow might be better than Ruggs. I think so.
I don't think Ruggs is very good at all. I don't.
I agree. I loved Hunter Renfrow. So I think they do a good job of having kind of.
You know who Ruggs kind of reminds me of? Maybe this is really dumb, but I think he'll end up having
wide receiver that's ever run the 40, every single one.
I was just going to say that I think he's going to have like a Ted Ginn type career where he's a good receiver and good for what he does, but he maybe never breaks out and becomes like a real star player.
I have no idea why.
I kept comparing John Ross and Henry Ruggs to Corey Coleman. They all feel very similar, of like not super stellar route runners, but they're like fast and they can just like run by people. And I don't know. There's like, I remember Corey Coleman coming out of college and like his route tree consists of like slants and go routes. And I'm like, that's not good.
I really liked Corey Coleman coming out of the draft, but there were no good wide receivers in that class.
No, I liked him too. I can't lie.
Yeah. Anyway, are there any other wide receivers that you guys are looking at? Mine's Edwards. I think that
I know Van Jefferson. Is a guy that people talk about a little bit for the Rams. And my thing, maybe it's a little bit of a reach. I don't know if I'd say he can break out. I don't think he's a stellar route runner. I think he has good hands. I think he tracks the ball well, but like. And it's also hard to tell, like, with Jared Goff, like, that receiving core is, like, fine. Cooper Kupp, Robert Woods, and then Van Jefferson.
Tutu Atwell. He was their first pick.
Yeah, Tutu Atwell. Yeah, Tutu Atwell's there. I just don't know if I would say that any of those guys are going to break out necessarily, because it's like transitioning from Jared Goff to Matt Stafford's like, yeah, of course you're going to, look better when you have a significantly better quarterback. I don't know if I'd consider that breaking out, though.
I mean, I like Jefferson. I think he's a really good route runner. I think he has really good hands. And I think
I'm
he's
not
in a
saying
better
he's a
position
bad
to
route
get
runner.
snaps
Maybe
this
that
year.
came off as me saying he's a bad route runner. I just don't know if I would say he's like
I remember him
top tier,
killing people at the Senior Bowl. He would kill people at the Senior Bowl. But I mean, he'll probably get more snaps with a quarterback who I like better. I feel like that can only lead to good things.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. It'll be him versus Tutu Atwell, kind of being that wide receiver 3. And Atwell is weird because Atwell is tiny. Atwell weighs like 150 pounds. He's minuscule, but the dude is so damn fast. And I don't know. His 40 time was not as fast as he is. When you look at Louisville and you look at his tape, there is no one faster than Tutu Atwell. He's a little. I don't know how to describe him. He just moves like you're like, whoa, first snap. It's like this guy, and I know they love motion, and I know they love to fake the little like jet sweep, like touch dot pass things that they do, which will probably be Tutu's role. But I don't think that Atwell, even though he was their first pick, I just think he's too small to go out there and just be like winning all these
I think the Rams are in a really good spot to just rotate. They can just rotate receivers. I think they have the flexibility to do that.
I don't know. That type of player profile just screams gadget player to me.
Right.
But if there's anybody that can make good use out of a gadget player, it's McVay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And McVay has had nothing but exemplary things to say about Stafford. So I'm really excited to watch that offense. And I think Van Jefferson.
He hated Jared Goff. He hated Jared Goff so much.
I read an article. That said that Sean McVay actually felt bad, that he felt that he could have done more in Goff's earlier years to better improve.
I don't think so, because Jared Goff as a rookie was the worst quarterback ever. Jared Goff as a rookie was literally so horrible, and then he was good for a little bit. So I don't think McVay could have made him better. Moving on.
At the end, yeah, absolutely. Moving on, Theo. I know you like J.K. Dobbins. I want to hear what you have to say.
J.K. Dobbins is fantastic, and I think that he could be an all-pro. I have the sky's the limit with Dobbins. That dude does not go down. He does not go down. His balance is so special. His broken tackle ability is so special. He's fast. Again, it comes back down to balance. He's got good vision, and Gus Edwards is also great, or at least very good. And Lamar Jackson is obviously someone who takes a lot of carries. So I don't know if
that team's running game is going to be. It's going to be brutal.
It's going to be so good. But J.K. Dobbins, I think, has as much talent as any running back in the league. I really do. I think his balance and speed and power is all exemplary.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I'll with a couple bold takes, he was the best running back in his draft class. And me and Blaiden, I know, we were really high on him when he came out because, we're big Ohio State fans. And his stretch towards the end of the 2019 season for Ohio State, he got injured, but he was playing better than Ezekiel Elliott ever was for Ohio State. I mean, he is that good. There was a time where I didn't love him for OSU. After his sophomore year, he didn't look that good. And then he just came out, and his last year, ridiculous. You can't bring him down. He's so strong. Like you said, it's just he's going to be seriously good. I don't think him having the most yards per carry of any running back was a fluke.
No, it wasn't.
It never
is. If you look at Next Gen Stats, and they have a stat called rushing yards over expectation, where they track where they think a typical average running back would have gone down, and yards past that are kind of where special running backs are. And I know that's kind of an objective quantification there, but J.K. Dobbins just scored remarkably well in that category. And I did a player review on him, and there was a play versus the Steelers where they hit him and he bent in half, and his head and his feet were pointed in the same direction. And he stayed up, and it's what are you doing, man? His balance,
his
unbelievable. Contact balance is ridiculous.
No, the only concern with him, at least fantasy-wise, is just that he's not going to get enough touches. It has nothing to do with him as a player.
Exactly.
But even then, I think that they're not going to have any choice but to give him the ball.
And I think they're going to run so much.
You mentioned Gus. Gus Edwards was also top 10 running back in PFF grade. They have a really good. They're going to have a stellar running attack.
That's going to be awesome.
But So. And you mentioned someone who's better than Ezekiel Elliott, or someone who a hot take, someone better than Ezekiel Elliott. I've got another one of those. I think Zeke is such a fraud. I think eventually it is going to get to the point, and I don't think he's going to get any better because he's been around a while. He's probably out of a running back prime. I don't think he's not super fast, or he doesn't have these game breaking abilities. I think eventually it's going to get harder and harder to keep Tony Pollard off the field, because I think Tony Pollard is also a running back with big home run ability. And I think they don't want to start him because Zeke is making so much money.
Exactly.
And they committed so much to Zeke. But I think eventually it's going to get to the point where Pollard is seeing more and more time.
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Tony Pollard should be starting. Absolutely should, not even it's just going to get harder to keep him off the field. He should be starting. He's the better player right now. He was a better player last year. There's no reason to think otherwise. You can just watch the games and tell that Tony Pollard's a better player. And the only reason
I was saying this, if we want to take victory laps, I was saying this about Zeke when Zeke was leading the league in rushing yards, that he wasn't as good as his backup. I know
you got hate for that.
I know I did, and it was mostly not even online because I wasn't on TikTok at that point. But it was in the dorms of my college of ASU, talking to Cowboys fans who thought I was clinically insane. but I'm not. Tony Pollard is faster. He's better at breaking tackles. He doesn't fumble as much. He doesn't drop as much. Like, eventually, he's got to get a bigger workload.
Yeah, it's I don't know. It's tough because they're paying Zeke so much money that maybe they could figure out that it's the right decision to start Pollard, but out of just pride, they can't. I think if Zeke ends up getting benched, it's going to be because of the fumbling. That's what's going to kill him, because that you just can't. Yeah.
Yeah, you can. I think you can get away with. You can get away with. He's just getting like 4 yards a carry, and it's not like making mistakes. But when you start turning the ball over, that's when it gets, really, really bad.
Yeah. And no one has fumbled more than Zeke over the last 3 or 4 or 5 years. I don't think that anyone has any skill. Maybe some quarterbacks have, but no skill position players have. And I've been talking about the Broncos too much lately. But if we're talking about breakout quarterbacks, Drew Lock is someone who everyone is out a little bit too early on. He's out a little bit too early on. And like the amount of big, gutsy, wow throws that he makes are so much higher than, I think he's better than Darnold. Like if there was that PFF chart that I shared where it was like big time throws, and Locke was like on the other side of the chart than where Darnold was, and with about the same amount of turnover worthy plays. I think he's better than Daniel Jones. I think he's better than everyone where it's like you question if he's good or not. Like you're not quite sure. Like Drew Lock is in that category, but I think he's better than everyone else in that category.
Is there anybody in that category that you think is like actually legitimately good?
I think Locke could be. I really do. There are games that Chargers, that fourth quarter, it was just big throw after big throw after big throw. And in the Patriots game that he played early, it was like big throw after big throw that Judy would just drop, or that would just not be completed because his wide receiving core is just not good. And he's good when it comes to play action, and if they implement that a bunch, play action is kind of a cheat code, and like I know everyone kind of looks, but he's good with play action. He's good when there's no pressure, horrible with it. But I don't know. I feel like Locke has the I like Daniel Jones. I think his internal clock is like broken. I think like he just cannot sense rushers in the appropriate way, and I don't know if that's fixable. Locke has like fixable things, and his arm talent is as good as anyone, and he already hits big throws more than anyone does. It's just like he doesn't need to get better at that. He just needs to get better at footwork, pretty much.
Yeah, I have that chart with like efficiency versus rate played outside of structure. Drew Lock is on the same plane as Daniel Jones, and is also kind of similar to Jalen Hurts, at least in efficiency. And he's plays,
not efficient. He's the worst quarterback in the league, efficiency-wise.
Yeah, in terms of I think he was like literally like out of 51 quarter, I think he was like 43rd.
Analytically, he's dead last in everything.
Like he's like horrible. But no, right. I agree. It's like it's the problem of like when he's not in a structure that works. When he's not in like that perfect Cleveland Browns, Tennessee Titans from last year's structure, he is obviously just like totally struggling. But when he is, he's definitely successful. And that's the same thing with Hurts, same thing with Daniel Jones. And Daniel Jones, you mentioned his clock. It's just totally broken.
I feel like last episode we talked about Teddy Bridgewater or Locke to start the season, and I said Bridgewater. And I'm not saying that my opinion on Drew Lock has necessarily changed wildly, but I think the logic that I said starting Bridgewater was wrong. Because if you start Bridgewater week 1, just like I said with Cam Newton, you're kind of out. You're kind of out on Locke, right?
Yes.
You're kind of out on. Like, same thing with the Patriots. If they start Mac Jones week 1, that kind of says we're out on Cam Newton since he was a starter last year. And I think it is fair to, like, okay, Locke obviously has higher potential than Bridgewater. See what you got with him. And if it doesn't work out, then you go to Bridgewater. But you don't start with Bridgewater because then...
And I watched most of my Locke. I agreed with you there, where it's like you have this great defense. You don't want to blow it with someone who sucks. And I thought Locke sucked as recently as like 2 days ago because I wasn't really watching him. I was paying attention to like his DVOA and DYR and all that. And he's terrible at that. He's not efficient. But after watching some of the tape, and it's like after watching the big play percentage that PFF had, where it's like this dude is as good as anyone in the league when it comes to like making big throws. And I looked at the wide receiving core and saw they caught a lower percentage of on-target passes than anyone. He's only going to get better. And the potential is I mean, he had more big-time throws than Allen, I think, was what the chart said, than Josh Allen. It's no one who sucks throws that many amazing throws. No one who is awful makes that many astounding throws.
But then there's also Daniel Jones, who had like the highest deep passing completion percentage last year.
But he's not as good as Locke. I don't care what Locke just makes better throws than Jones does. Like, I watch Locke.
I agree with you.
You are not going to see. He is too good to be just this backup. Like, no backup makes throws like that all the time, and he kind of does.
I don't know. I feel like you can have big time throws and do the difficult stuff, but if you can't do some of the other stuff, then yeah, you are a bad quarterback. Like, Daniel Jones has all the talent in the world, but if his internal clock, his sense of pressure is messed up, that doesn't make a good quarterback.
You have to be able to do the easy stuff.
Yeah, you got to be able to do the easy stuff too. It doesn't matter if you can
throw it a million yards if you're missing like checkdowns.
True.
You can't read the field. So if you had to give a prediction for the Broncos now, after knowing what you now know about Drew Lock,
I think the Broncos are going to be a good vibe next year. I think their defense is going to be humming. I think Drew Lock is not even going to have to do that much. I think he's going to be, keeping him in it. He's a fun guy. Seems to be a leader that like people would like to rally around. I think they're going to get off to some quick wins because their schedule is easy. Everyone's going to be kind of humming. It's going to be a good atmosphere in Denver, and I think they go like 10-7, something like in that range.
You heard it here first, folks. Theo says the Broncos are going to be fun and vibing.
They are.
I kind of agree. Looking at their schedule and knowing that their pass rush was really good last year, and they're adding Von Miller, and they didn't even blitz that much. I'm pretty sure they weren't even top 50% of the league in blitzing.
And they didn't. And they've added like 3 starting caliber corners to their team.
Yeah. I kind of think there's some teams that are going to match up really horribly against that defense, particularly early in their schedule. They have a lot of games I feel really confident about them in, but 10 wins is totally achievable.
Yeah, it is. It's just going to be hard for them to make the playoffs in the AFC because it's such a hard conference. Especially this year.
That's a whole
I think 10 wins gets them there.
10 wins would be enough. 10 wins would be enough, and it's not unbelievable that it could happen. But I still don't know if they quite hit 10. I still think that's going to be a hard thing to do for them. Drew Lock to me is either going to be basically what Justin Herbert was this past year, right? I think he's going to have like 25. I think he could either have like 25 plus touchdowns. I'm just saying. I'm saying he's going to be one of two guys. He's going to be either he's either going to be Justin Herbert or he's going to be like Carson Wentz. Like it's either going to be like the absolute almost like a rehabilitation of quarterback play, or he's just going to be atrocious. And I don't think
I think he's going to be Fitzpatrick. I think Fitzpatrick's a pretty good comp for him. Fitzpatrick also has a ton of arm talent and makes like doesn't give a damn and will make some crazy throws. And he's vibing. He's a cool dude. I think Locke is kind of Fitzpatrick-y, where he is like not. He opens up an offense because he's not afraid to take chances, and I feel like that's gonna. Okay. I think the Broncos have a Fitzpatrick level quarterback in Drew Lock, which is not the worst thing in the world to have. And
Fitzpatrick almost got Miami to the playoffs, so maybe Drew Lock can almost get Denver to the playoffs, but
he will.
I think that kind of wraps things up on our end. We appreciate you all listening in. Once again, make sure you follow us on TikTok at StayHotPod. Great content be coming there. And, whatever platform you're listening on, YouTube, Spotify, Apple, whatever, make sure you rate, subscribe, review, as always. And we'll catch you on the flippity flop.